Last time I talked about how the word desher should be the most used word by the ancient Egyptians to describe themselves, given that that's the paint that they labeled and used for the most part. And then I also told you that I wouldn't expect them to use the word kem, meaning black, that much. But just because I don't expect them to doesn't mean they didn't. In fact, they did. And I have proof.
On the next section.
First, let's start with the high priest of Ptah, known as Sabu. Sabu, also called Kem. Sabu, called Kem, was high priest of Ptah, probably during the reign of Pepi I. His precise titles include greatest of the directors of craftsmen belonging to the day of the festival of the sun. This is the main title of the high priest of Ptah, priest of Sokka in the two houses, and priest of Ptah. So this guy, Sabu, also called Kem, is literally being called Sabu the Black. That's what they literally are calling him. His name is Sabu of Kem. Sabu Kem. And I will prove this by showing a document written about him. So this shows Sabu Kem being initiated into the period of being high priest, and his excitement is documented. It says in the inscription, Sabu, also called Teti. This Sabu was a successor of Sabu, called also Ibebi, high priest of Ptah. His inscription is of importance as showing that before his time there were always two high priests of Ptah. Today, in the presence of His Majesty appointed me as High Priest of Memphis alone. The temple of Ptah south of his wall, in its every place, was under my charge. Although there never was a single priest of Ptah before, Sokka initiated all the sacred possession and all duties which two high priests of Ptah did, although never was the like done by any high priest of Ptah in the time of any king of the house of the crown possessions. As an honor from His Majesty appointed me under my charge, although their offices were like those of their fathers under my charge, which was done in the whole land, the heart of His Majesty being mightier than anything that is done therein. And as you can see, it writes that there's another inscription that speaks of a builder that has also got the same name. The unknown, a mere fragment of whose tomb inscriptions here follows, was perhaps the builder of a pyramid temple of Teti, for he relates a royal commission to conduct the work on a Ka temple, for which the materials come from the Troja quarry opposite the Saqqara cemetery where Teti's pyramid stands. Now, if you look at the bottom, it writes there at the bottom in the inscription, fragments of a false door in Cairo Museum, numbers 1709 and 1756, published by Marietti Mastabas in 390. Sethi Urkended from copy by Emran. Still another Sabu, a third of the name was called Sabu the Black. SBWKM, probably Sabu Kem. Sabu Kem, meaning Sabu the Black, perhaps to distinguish him from the other two, for he was also a high priest of Ptah, so restored by Sethi. And in the view of the following context, the restoration is very probable. Keep in mind, this is only one Sabu and one person in the ancient Egyptian world that was referred to as the Black. There are others. There are even pharaohs who are referred to as the Black. One of the gods is referred to as the Black. And this black term usually refers to someone who's exceedingly darker than other people in ancient Egypt, even though the people themselves would have been desher. They would have been dark themselves in any way, but they would have been a brown dark instead of a black dark, which is here they're differentiating him in this way.
On the next section.
The land known as Kemet, that is ancient Egypt's real name, Kemet, that is ancient Egypt.
I have a plethora of problems with your fixation of the word Kemet, which is also a common trait among Afrocentrists. Now, I myself have used the word Kemet on occasion. It's not that the word is wrong, but fixating on it has zero linguistic standing. Let me elaborate. First and foremost, do you always use the correct and appropriate term for describing a nation? Do you say Japan? Wrong, it's Nihon. Do you say China? Wrong, it's Zhongguo. Do you say Germany? Wrong, it's Deutschland. Also, for reference, linguistically speaking, Ancient Egyptian is an Afro-Asiatic language, and it does not have, for as much as we understand, Southern African origins. It's
Okay, let me quickly address this since we're already here. The Afro-Asiatic languages did affect other languages that are not Afro-Asiatic. They're not stagnant. Arabic, which is Afro-Asiatic, has affected both the English language and some Bantu languages, including Swahili and other languages. It's not about where the origin comes from. It's about, did the language affect the other language? Now, there's two theories. There's the Levantine theory, which posits that the Afro-Asiatic languages started in the Levant and then they went into Africa. And using that theory, they say that the Afro-Asiatic languages definitely affected the Bantu languages. And that's where farming came from, is their guess. The second one is that the Afro-Asiatic languages started somewhere in Africa, but
the Afro-Asiatic languages are a language family of about 400 languages, spoken predominantly in Western Asia, North Africa, the Horn of Africa, and parts of the Sahara and Sahel. Over 500 million people are native speakers of an Austroasiatic language, constituting the fourth largest language family after Indo-European, Sino-Tibetan, and Niger-Congo. Most linguists divide the family into 6 branches: Berber, Chadic, Cushitic, Egyptian, Semitic, and Omotic. The vast majority of Afro-Asiatic languages are considered indigenous to the African continent, including all those not belonging to the Semitic branch. In the next part, let's listen to the beautiful sounds of their languages.
So, as you heard from I Love Languages, the channel, the Afro-Asiatic languages, including the Semitic ones, are thought to have originated in Africa. This is the predominant, the majority view of linguists. You know, the same linguists that decided that the word Kumata was Kumata instead of Kemet. Those linguists that Metatron trusts say that the ancient Egyptian language is native to Africa, just like the Semitic languages, including Arabic. This is the majority view. So, we're using this argument of it's Afro-Asiatic means nothing. In fact, it means that the ancient Egyptians should be African by extension of their language being native to Africa. In his argument, since he was trying to say that the language is Semitic, this means that they're not native. But that was incorrect.
Camito-Semitic. Geographically, Asia is physically connected to Africa, which is something that people seem to forget.
They seem to forget it the most when it comes to black people who left Asia through that area using that bridge, that land bridge, all the way to Asia and all the way to India. There's black people who left in the last 10,000 years, going all the way to India and some black people going to Asia, and then I've showed with genetic proof that there's some people from East Africa who went to um, the Middle East. But keep in mind, when I say they came from East Africa, that's a the gene starts in East Africa, or is most commonly present in East Africa, and has ancient ties in East Africa. This does not mean that these were not Egyptians or something like that. It might have been any of these groups, but it's an African DNA that went into East Africa a long time ago.
Also, when you say Kemet, you're using the so-called E of convention used by Egyptologists when they don't know how to vocalize consonants. But the fact that archaeologists use it doesn't mean that that's the correct way to pronounce it. They're archaeologists, not linguists. To reconstruct ancient Egyptian, we need to vocalize it through Coptic and loanwords in Hebrew and in Greek, similarly to how classical Latin has been reconstructed, and throughout the transcription of cuneiform, script of the Neo-Babylonian period, and Assyrian. Also building with the similarities of the Saitic dialect, we know that linguistically speaking, the pronunciation Kemet has no academic linguistic dignity. It clearly comes from the Coptic pronunciation Kem and Kemi in the Boairic dialect. The long air in open syllable in that specific position helps us understand that most likely in classical Egyptian we have a U in that position. So if we really want to be precise, then the correct and most likely pronunciation in ancient Egyptian, specifically in classical Egyptian, is Kumat, Kumatu, nominative, Kumata, accusative, and Kumati, oblique genitive. Now let's
Keep in mind, whether the word is kum, com, or cam, this makes no difference to the argument at hand, which is the meaning of the word, not how the word is said. Just like if I said the word black means black, right? And someone said, actually, it's blick instead of black. It doesn't change that the word means black. It's just a pronunciation thing and is irrelevant to the point.